sorting through items in his room, is a young man who will be known going forward as the protagonist or main character. He prepares for his journey. He checks to make sure everything is in order, then packs his bags and heads out of his room. When he goes at the airport, his credentials and ticket are examined. He heads toward the hallway so he can get on his plane. He enters the passageway, opens a magical barrier, and is instantly swept away into a fantastical realm. Finding oneself in a world where magic is commonplace astonishes and terrifies him. He gathers himself and pulls out his phone to snap some photos. He becomes bored after realizing how much pleasure he's been having. He sits down by himself and begins to reflect on his life because he has no one to talk to. At that moment, our main character is challenged by the gardener, an elderly man who appears from behind. When he inquires as to whether he was checked out at the border, our main character simply remains motionless and bewildered. Taking him by the hand, the gardener guides him to a mystical stone where the locals discover what kind of power they are born with. Before contacting the stone, our main character pulls off a few amusing pranks. Everyone in the room is stunned when he touches the stone and a brilliant white light shoots across the space, giving the impression that he is suddenly unique. The individuals in his immediate vicinity calm our main character down by telling him that he is nothing more than a hollow shell when he brags. The locals tell our main character that the magical realm is home to a variety of spirits. Golden spirits, white spirits, wood spirits, water spirits, wind spirits, and fire spirits are among the spirits. Touching the stone reveals the hue that represents the spirit of the person. Since the color that reflected back to us when our main character touched the stone was a pure white, this merely indicates that he is devoid of magical talents. Nevertheless, close examination reveals that there is a small amount of green mixed in with the brilliant brightness. This suggests that he possesses certain magical powers in relation to the wood spirit. They reassure him that with time, his power might become more potent. When the gardener comes over to our main character, he can be seen crying. He receives encouragement from the gardener, who suggests that he use what little magic he has to aid him with his garden. With his basic understanding of wood, he can grow plants and other things. After taking the position, he begins planting plants in the garden. He hears a woman's voice coming from the jungle one day when he is working in the garden. As our main character approaches to look into it, he notices two men with Sister Shesha, a stunning nun. He is quickly found by the three, who then pursue him. They play with him for a while before deciding to let him go since he claimed not to have seen anything. After returning home, our protagonist bemoans his treatment to the gardener. The gardener then informs him that finding a fairy is an alternative means of obtaining power. The gardener discloses that although he possesses a fairy seed, he hasn't been able to cultivate it or get it to work. He hands it over to our protagonist so he can try his luck. Upon closer inspection, the main character discovers that the seed has a seal. He starts working right away to figure out how to open the seal and sprout the seed. Having exhausted every tactic in the book, he attempts to use his blood to break the seal. He splatters the seed with a drop of blood, but nothing happens. With a look of sadness on his face, he lowers his head and the seed briefly glows. The two guys and Sister Shasha are encountered by the main character later that evening while he is strolling in the woods. Sister Shasha kills the two men by turning into a vampire out of nowhere. When the main character notices this, he tries to flee, but Shasha follows him. She kills him by stabbing him through the heart while holding him in a plant lock. At that moment, the fairy seed that was in the main character's pocket gains strength. Mo Fei, a demon girl who changes from the seed, gets in the way of the main character and the Shasha. The protagonist feels relieved that Mo Fei is there to save him, but he soon finds out that it is actually the other way around. Mo Fei tries to use her magic to help the main character who is lying down and about to die, but nothing happens. Mo Fei easily defeats Shasha when she attacks, and she chooses to utilize Shasha's vitality to heal the main character. All of Shasha's resources are transferred to the main character by Mo Fei. After waking up, the main character begins to think humorously about Mo Fei. But Mo Fei tells him that she simply kept him alive so she can murder him. The main guy is attacked by Mo Fei, who slices him on the hand with her sword. Surprisingly, Mo Fei is impacted by the wound rather than him. The same thing happens when she cuts him again. The same area of her body where she cuts the main character is hurt by her. A woman appears, bewildered and with dew, and presents herself as the chairman of the Shuo Yue Academy. She advises Mo Fei to quit assaulting her boss and to calm down because doing so will only do harm to herself. The main character is inherently the fairies' master because it was he who freed her from the plant. The protagonist is then given a book by the chairman to use as a home for the fairy. Ma Fei is locked in the book and given orders by the main character to turn back into a plant. Following the play, the chairman and the main character visit the chairman's home. The protagonist is informed by chairman that the book would serve as a guide for him in regards to fairies. She also discloses that she carries 2 more fairy plants. The protagonist is then informed by chairman that the book is the property of Shuo Yue Academy, and that she can only give it to him under specific circumstances. She orders the main character to enroll at Shuo Yue Academy and take classes with her. She continues by saying that the protagonist will assist her in finding the vampire who is hiding in the academy. The chairman hands up the guidebook to the protagonist as soon as he accepts the offer, but the protagonist keeps the 3 other fairies. After returning home, the main character begins reading the guidebook. Suddenly, he hears someone calling out to him. The main character becomes excited when Shuo Yue Academy the voice introduces herself as the support system that is set up in the book. The main character is informed by the support system that fairies are made from humans, animals, and plants, rather than being born. Then, in order to facilitate contact, the support system updates herself and installs herself on the main character's phone. The protagonist returns to the academy the following day as a pupil. The presence of someone with little to no magic in the school surprises everyone there. A bully student makes the decision to make him feel uncomfortable. He asks the protagonist to pick up a crystal that he dropped on the ground. When he does so, the crystal reflects a brilliant light, signifying that the main character now possesses 2 characteristics. The primary character possesses wood and wind qualities. Startled, the main character chooses to inquire of the support network as to why he has gained 2 traits. His physique has transformed, making him more distinctive according to the support system, which claims that he has absorbed the vitality of fairies and vampires. During the magic battle lesson, the bully challenges the main character to a duel with the intention of diverting his attention. Even though the main character tries to decline the challenge, their teacher is adamant that they accept. They are intercepted just as the combat is about to begin by Kai and one of the princesses of the realm. She is accompanied by her entourage and her bodyguard Lo Yu, also known as the Wari. The princess makes the decision to watch the fight as well. The protagonist is attacked by the bully with a supernatural wind, but he survives the blow. The main character passes out from the bully's repeated attacks and awakens to a barren landscape. The main character makes an effort to navigate the unfamiliar world. He tries to take care of a little girl who he meets who is destitute. 2 ominous-looking males try to drag the girl away as he is doing it. They emerge from the shadows. The men intercept the main character when he tries to flee with the girl. The main character uses his body as a shield to deflect all of their strikes directed at the female. Opening her eyes, the young girl gives the main character her gratitude for his assistance. At that moment, the protagonist awakens and discovers he was in a trance. The main character requests the support system to clarify what transpired after waking up. According to the support system, the main character went to the fairies' world. What he observed was a former member of Mo Fei during her human form. The main character becomes depressed over Mo Fei having to experience this while still a human. When the main character chooses to speak with Mo Fei, it's clear that she's still upset with him because she treats him poorly. A short while later, the main character's hospital room is invaded by two vampires. To see if anyone is present, the vampires scout the room. When they come across the main character, they argue over what to do with him. The vampires refer to Luri as king when he appears at that precise moment. They exit the room when he calls them. After returning home, the main character tries to call the chairman, but is unable to do so. It's imperative that he informs her about the vampire's schemes. The protagonist hears footsteps at his door later that evening as he settles down to eat a plate of instant noodles. Without checking to see who the intruder is, he checks the door and strikes him immediately. The invader is knocked unconscious when he strikes her in the face. The main guy becomes aware that he has just eliminated Kai and the princess. Despite his fear, he brings Kai into his room so he can tend to her. He sleeps next to her, covering her with a blanket. The main character is lying close to Kai when she wakes up shortly after. She repeatedly punches the main character. The main character admits that all he did was look after her, and that nothing else occurred while she was sleeping. He does, however, understand that Enkai is upset that the main character covered her with a rough blanket and forced her to sleep in a tough dwelling. Tai then becomes quiet, and the main character gives her some noodles. She adores the noodles after tasting them. They hear noises coming from all over the home. It dawns on the main character that the vampires are after him. He and Intui run for their lives, but not before the vampires demolish the house and find out about the duel. Additionally, Q and the main character make it out of the woods. And Kai is able to flee thanks to the main character, but the vampires corner him. When the main character notices that the vampires are getting closer to him, he lets Mufei go to protect him. When Mufei appears, he dispatches the vampires with ease. Liori shows up at that precise moment to confront Mufei. The main character is informed by the support system that Liori is extremely strong, and that Mofei will not be able to overcome him. Liori and Mofei are engaged in a fierce battle, but Liori is winning. In an effort to save Mofei from Liori's death, the main character begins to explore for ways to assist her. The main character is informed by the support system that there are two methods for a master and his fairy to have a stronger bond: regular correspondence or reconstructing the realm of spirits. Because he doesn't speak with Mo Fei on a daily basis, the main character learns that constant communication is already out of the picture. In order to give Mo Fei enough strength, he makes the decision to travel to the spirit world and reconstruct it. He attempts to awaken his spiritual force, but his weakness prevents it from being sufficient. At that moment, Inky emerges from the forest and declares her extraordinary spiritual power. She promises to support the protagonist in his exploration of the spirit realm. When Inkai witnesses Liori battling Mofei, she immediately distances herself from any further inquiry by saying that the opponent is someone she knows. His goal is to shield her from the knowledge that her bodyguard is actually a vampire monarch. And Kaioi begins to use the spiritual powers she has summoned to power the main character. Mofei stops Liori when he tries to halt the process. When the main character first enters the afterlife, she recognizes Mo Fei from her past. Mo Fei is an expert assassin with years of experience. When the main character tries to talk to Mo Fei, he finds that he is unable to communicate with her. Mo Fei witnesses a homeless man caressing his cat while traveling home. Because of his concealment, we will only be able to identify him as a homeless man for the time being. Mo Fei offers to buy a sword from the homeless man, but he refuses to sell it to her. Mo Fei admires the weapon. The protagonist also notices that he resembles the homeless man in appearance. Mo Fei witnesses the homeless man serenading a group of homeless females with his violin that evening. Mo Fei locks her window, but not before he establishes eye contact. Next, Mo Fei witnesses some thieves pestering the homeless man and one of the homeless females as he is strolling along the alley. Mo Fei intervenes and rescues the pair. The homeless man chooses to offer Mo Fei his sword as a present in order to express his gratitude. After accepting the present, Mo Fei invites the homeless man to phone her at any moment he feels threatened. After making observations, the main character begins to suspect that the homeless man is hiding something. The main character begins to worry that Mo Fei is a character and that the homeless man is just playing a game. Enki's strength is running low back in the fantasy realm. Therefore, the main character must find a way out quickly. Luori swings her sword fiercely, piercing Mo Fei's chest as she moves out of the way. The main character, Mo Fei, then uses her blood to make a prison lock that will imprison Luori and give him enough time. Mo Fei is made fun of by Luori, who claims she can only hold him until her blood runs out. Mo Fei responds that they will have to find out when he asks whether giving herself up was worthwhile. The protagonist appears powerless as he moves around in the spirit world. He begins yelling at the homeless man as soon as he sees him. The homeless man can hear him, which surprises him. The protagonist disputes the homeless man's assertion that they are virtually the same person since they share the same soul, using his vow to never injure Mo Fei as evidence. The destitute man claims that Mo Fei is simply a character, and that everything is all a game. The main character is furious about this, but he is unable to stop it. Later on, Mafi receives an unexpected visit from the homeless man, who brings her some delectable cookies. This surprises Mafi because no one has ever paid her a visit before, because she is so well known in the East District. The fact that the homeless man is merely attempting to approach Mafi and lower her guard raises greater concerns for the main character. Shortly later, Mo Fei goes on a date with the homeless man to a lighthouse. He informs her that there is a peaceful, conflict-free paradise located beyond Mirror Lake. In order for them to live a fun-filled existence, he urges Mo Fei to accompany him to the lovely location. Later, as the homeless guy passes by, Mo Fei is in the middle of an assassination mission. Mo Fei orders the homeless man to go wait for her at home and swiftly hides her sword. Mo Fei begins to worry that in order to be with the homeless man, she might have to leave her assassination job. When Mo Fei returns home, the homeless man has made her a really good meal. Mo Fei shares her assassination secret with the homeless man, beaming with happiness. She doesn't detest Mo Fei either, but the homeless man claims he doesn't enjoy killing. He demands that Mo Fei forsake her life as an assassin and accompany him to the stunning location he refers to as paradise. The main guy, looking helpless, yells at the top of his lungs in an attempt to reach Mo Fei and warn her, but his cry is not heard. Next, Mo Fei is assigned an assassination mission. In order to leave with the homeless man, Mo Fei needs the money, so she takes the job. Although Mafi's employer warns that the target may prove to be a little challenging, Mafi is confident in her abilities. Her employer gives her the advance when she requests one. When the job is over, she promises to come back and collect the whole payment. Mafi's employer tells her not to trust her and warns her about the homeless man as she is leaving, but she ignores the warning. After that, Mafi purchases tickets for herself and the man who is homeless so they can depart. Mafi is told by the homeless man to meet him at the lighthouse in 3 days. They're going to depart from the lighthouse, he says. Mafi finishes her assassination mission fast because she is excited. When the time arrives, she gathers her belongings and heads toward the lighthouse. As she waits for the homeless man to arrive, she sits down. The primary character observes as Mo Fei gradually grows more and more anxious. The homeless man hasn't been up after 3 days, and the main character is now furious that Mo Fei is still unable to recognize that the homeless man doesn't care about her. At that moment, Mo Fei's employer shows up and lets her know she's in danger. He claims that in an effort to get rid of her, the Western District, their adversary, has surrounded the lighthouse. The lighthouse's top is destroyed by a projectile fired by the assailants, but Mafi's boss is able to divert her. Mo Fei surmises that since everything is still going on, the homeless man must be in danger and is unable to appear. Mo Fei savagely dispatches her assailants. One of the homeless girls is being held captive by the attackers, who demand that Mo Fei give herself up. But she quickly puts an end to them all and rescues the girl. Mo Fei comforts the girl by giving her a hug, but she soon gets a shocker. She was consoling the homeless girl who had stabbed her in the chest. While Mo Fei is still trying to figure out why the girl did it, a smiling homeless man appears. The vagrant man shows up with a second squad of attackers. The vagrant girl affirms that the vagrant man is correct on Mo Fei. She claims it was pretty simple to get rid of her. The man who was homeless was the one who visited the Western District. It is subsequently discovered. He says he will give them control of the Eastern District. He claims that only Mo Fei has the potential to be a problem, and that if she is eliminated, everything else should be simple. When the Western District asks what he wants in return, the homeless man retorts, "I want a good sword," with casualness. Even though Mo Fei is devastated by the news, she still gets up and approaches the homeless man. She thinks back on all the fun times she spent with him as she gets closer. The bandits stop her as she is going to approach the homeless man. As they restrain her, the leader from the West declares that Mo Fei is his. The leader claims he didn't clarify whether she wanted her dead or alive. But the homeless man insists the agreement is to give her up to him. Just as Mo Fei's life is about to end, 3 fairies appear and take out the robbers. Mo Fei tries to pursue the homeless man after gathering power, but one of the fairies intervenes. Mo Fei attacks again and again until the fairy splits her sword in two. Then the homeless man offers Mo Fei the chance to transform into a fairy top. He claims to have circled the globe in search of suitable ladies to become fairies. After observing Mo Fei, he believes she is deserving. But for the contract to be finalized, Mo Fei needs to accept the offer. Mo Fei agrees to the terms and promises to keep looking for ways to get rid of the homeless man. A magical vine emerges from the fairy seed when the homeless man releases its power. Mo Fei is encircled by vines, and if she makes it through, the homeless man claims she will turn into a fairy. The protagonist observes everything as it happens. He confronts the homeless man for treating Mo Fei so cruelly. According to the homeless man, he is merely attempting to develop his game characters. The main character and the homeless man claim to be the same person. All that the homeless man is attempting to accomplish is fulfill the main character's desire to rule the world and possess great power. The main character chastises his past self and vows that he will never harm Mo Fei. The homeless man vanishes at that very moment. The main character begins attempting to assist Mo Fei. In order to give Mo Fei sufficient strength, he devises the plan to end his own life. He tries to ram one of the shattered swords into his chest, but he lacks the strength to do it. The support system alerts him to the possibility that he could not wake up again if he proceeds with the plan. The main character becomes increasingly determined to save Mo Fei as the spirit world begins to collapse. He ascends the vines and gives Mo Fei a kiss. He applies some of his blood to the vine while holding it tightly. Then he leaps off and lands on the sharp, shattered sword with its blade facing upward. His chest is pierced by the sword, and everything goes dark. Mo Fei begins to see things that she was previously blind to as the vine's power seeps into her. She observes the protagonist's valiant attempts to alert her to the homeless man. The protagonist then jumps and lands on a broken sword, which she witnesses. When she musters all of her might and manages to free herself from the vine, the fairy process is ultimately accomplished. At last, Mo Fei emerges from the vine, a whole fairy. She draws the blade as she approaches the protagonist's body. She sobs because she doesn't think he's not the same homeless man. She sobs for his innocence while also thanking him for saving her. Mo Fei sobs bitterly and declares she does not want the main character to perish. She tries to wake him up, but it's all in vain. Just as Mo Fei gets up to go, the protagonist suddenly comes to life and grabs her leg. The main character expresses regret for causing her emotional distress. Mo Fei punches the protagonist after becoming enraged. He cries and swears he didn't know he was going to come back to life, but she thinks he was just acting dead. He informs Mo Fei that Kai is keeping the protagonist alive with her spiritual energy, and that Kai is the one who makes it possible for him to be there. At this point, he believes Kai must be really weak. The protagonist's planned success surprises the support system as well. Once again expressing gratitude, Mo Fei informs the protagonist that they are in this together. When she inquires about what has to be done, the protagonist responds that it's time to go back to the fantastical realm. After the protagonist opens a gateway, the two go back to the fantastical realm. When he comes back, he finds Enkai's energy completely gone. She is gently laid on the floor by him after he keeps her from falling. He also says that when Enkai wakes up, he would feed her a ton of quick noodles. Mafei becomes stronger by merging with the protagonist in order to beat Luori. Luori attacks, but the main character easily repels him. He charges up, taking out Luori with a single blow to the ground. The protagonist worries that Luori is dead because the explosion leaves a sizable crater in the earth. But Mafei informs him that Luori is just unconscious. Mo Fei's affections for the protagonist have become stronger as a result of their interaction. The chairman arrives shortly later to fulfill her commitment. As part of their agreement, she gives the protagonist the 2 fairy seeds that are still with her. She suggests that the protagonist should figure out how to let the fairies in. The protagonist agrees to stay quiet when the chairman warns him not to tell anyone what transpired between them before departing. When the teacher announces to the class that 2 new students would be joining them, the protagonist is seen dozing off. As Kilai and Mafai walk inside the classroom, the guys are already drenched. The instructor instructs the two to locate a good seat. Mofai and Enki approach the protagonist while he sleeps and take a seat next to him. The protagonist's merging with Mofai the other night has left him feeling extremely weak and exhausted. When the main character awakens at last, the 2 girls are seated next to him. The males in the class discover that Mo Fei and Enki are acquainted as they talk about the protagonist. The fact that the protagonist typically ends up with the attractive girls enrages and pisses off the boys. He is pursued by them throughout the school, but he is able to hide and get away. The main character chooses to go to the library after escaping the boys. In order to learn how to open the 2 fairy seeds with him, he hopes to obtain books about plants. The librarian extends a warm greeting and requests specifics about his needs. The librarian tells him that due of his low reading level, he can only select and read 2 of the books he has listed. After selecting the 2 appropriate scrolls, the main character departs to examine them. The support system promises to enhance herself and integrate the scrolls into herself after hours of fruitless study sessions. She will be able to crack all of the scrolls' codes using this. The protagonist learns some fundamental information about cracking open the seeds from the support system. He plants one of the seeds in the lake, the one that takes better to water, and plants the other in the garden. He casts his spell and then watches to see what happens. The next scene shows Luori expressing regret to his supervisor for his mistake. Luori appears to be an international spy who has been operating for a while as Kai's bodyguard. He claims to his supervisor that a fairy's intervention was the primary cause of his failure. His supervisor grows increasingly intrigued and thinks that it's now more crucial to capture a fairy. The fairy seed in the water soon activates and begins to grow. Lotus Frost, a fairy, appears from the plant and declares her dislike for the main character. The main character becomes perplexed about what went wrong. Just before Lotus is about to assault the main character, Uxian, the fairy from the other seed, appears. When the 2 fairies see each other, they hug and appear content. Uxian claims that Lotus and she are sisters. Despite her confusion, Lotus chooses to follow the current. She continues by saying that she is prepared to carry out any task that the main character asks of her. However, Lotus is unimpressed with the protagonist, while Uxian is delighted to meet him. Next, Lotus and Uxian obey the protagonist's command to enter the handbook right away. Having successfully removed 2 more fairies' bandages, the protagonist is pleased. He declares that he is prepared to journey across the globe and release every fairy that the homeless man has imprisoned. The protagonist receives an invitation to the chairman's office later that evening. She addresses the main character by name and warns him he is going to perish. It turns out that Zhangzhu is the name of the protagonist. We would start referring to the protagonist by that name now that we are aware of it. Zhangzhu is told by the chairman that Liori is organizing the knights from Orpheus' realm to come assassinate him. Since Zhangzhu is the fairy master and must be eliminated before they can obtain the fairies, they wish to murder him. In case problems arise, the chairman says she is not prepared to take a chance on the academy. She requests that Mofei, Kiai, and Xiangsu depart. The librarian rushes over to offer Xiangsu a crystal terminal just as they are ready to depart. When Xiangsu discovers new scrolls or magic spells, she says he can use the crystal to receive rewards. Thanking her, Xiangsu bids the academy and everyone farewell. Xiangshui requests that the support system absorb the crystal and incorporate it into itself in order to strengthen and improve it. The gang soon comes at the well-known lake known as Woody Lake while they are traveling. When a fire dragon appears, Xiangshu and Entai are stopped from jumping into the lake as they are ready to do so. The dragon insists on receiving the fairies from Xiangshui. Declaring himself to be a member of the dragon royalty, he announces himself as Jiojos. He swings his weapon, but Xiangqiu stops it. The dragon is horrified when he learns that Xiangqiu defeated a level 8 knight, despite his constant boasts that he can kill the Chinese warrior. The dragon exclaims, "I'm only a level 3 dragon." When Xiangsu accepts the dragon, he resolves to battle it. When the fairies offer to assist, Xiangsu declines. The dragon and Xiangsu fight, but Xiangsu wins when he grabs hold of the dragon and tries to pull it into the water. Georgios, a fire dragon, swiftly concedes the battle in order to keep from being pulled into the lake. As a sign of respect, the dragon hands Xiangsu a flute. If Xiangsu ever finds himself in trouble, he instructs him to blow the flute, and he will come to his aid. The group gets to the Woody Lake Hotel shortly after that. The gang leaves the room to eat outside after locking up. Additionally, Key requests that a hotel employee tell her a story, and the employee consents. He relates a tale of how the lake was formerly known as Dry Leaf Lake. He tells how the whole lake was covered in lotus leaves, but one night all of the leaves abruptly withered. After then, the lake was dubbed Woody Lake. Just as Xiangshu is going to inquire as to what transpired, Lotus Frost storms off the scene in a fury, taking Kai to her room after she has fallen asleep. Xiangshu goes after Lotus and inquires about her condition. Lotus claims that she would kill Xiangshu because she despises him. She is advised not to do so by Xiangshu, but she persists. She attacks Xiangshu, but it doesn't go as planned. She is told by Xiangshu that she is unable to hurt her master. 3 mercenaries suddenly appear and claim to be there on behalf of the fairies. Xiangshu swiftly makes backup calls to Yuexian and Mofei. Xiangshu makes the decision to ask the dragon for assistance, rather than using up all of his fairy's strength. Georgios appears when he blows on the flute. He gives the dragon the order to eliminate the 3 hired guns. The dragon chooses to support the mercenaries, which exacerbates the situation. After Xiangshu is vanquished, he orders the mercenaries to deliver him a fairy. The fairies defend themselves from the mercenaries' assault. When the dragon pursues Xiangshu, he is taken aback by his desire for a rematch of their earlier confrontation. This time, Xiangshu tries to drag the dragon into the lake, but it is unsuccessful. At that moment, Xiangshu notices that there is a seal inside the lake when a dazzling light emerges from within. To assist him, Mo Fei goes into the lake. When Lotus and Yuexian become sidetracked, the mercenaries are able to overwhelm them with a powerful attack. But as the combat ends successfully, Mo Fei also comes back after failing to locate Xiangshui inside the lake. The 3 mercenaries and the 3 fairies get ready to battle. Liori is visible inside Enki's chamber in the meantime. Because of what he is about to do, he sobs terribly. Liori lifts his sword, getting ready to sever the princess. When Xiangshui awakens, he discovers he is in another universe. As he continues to attempt to make sense of his surroundings, he notices his other self, the homeless man, standing in the distance. Zhang is informed by the homeless man that a fresh game has started. At that moment, a girl who appears to be Lotus comes out of the trees. She goes to Zhang and gives him some medical attention. When Zhang asks the girl what her name is as she gets ready to leave, she replies, Lan. The homeless man informs Zhang that he is in the memory world after she leaves. If Zhang wants to find out the truth about her, he has to follow Lion, according to the homeless man. Refusing, Zhang declares that he doesn't trust him. The homeless man continues, saying that if Zhang does not discover the truth, he will not be able to go back home and save his fairies. Seeing how unyielding Zhang Shui is, the vagrant guy makes the decision to do the assignment on his own. Similar to what transpired in the spirit realm, he casts a magic spell to render Zhang Shui invisible to everyone. The destitute sense that something is around. Georgios falls from the tree after he hits it from behind. Georgios has unexpectedly shrunk to the size of a newborn dragon. He gives the dragon orders to serve him, threatening to prevent him from going home if he doesn't. Georgios takes the offer out of fear. Then, in an attempt to get nearer to Lion, the homeless man assumes the identity of Sainshu. The dragon reappears shortly bearing news about Lion. He claims that Lion is employed in a tiny village as a lotus picker. He continues by saying that Lion is looking for a medication for her ailing sister. The vagrant man chooses to go with Lion. After they cross paths, he and Lion begin to become more intimate. In search of a special herb, the homeless follow Lion into a monster's lair. A spell is thrown on the monster by the dragon, who harbors a secret hatred for the homeless man, causing it to attack both Lion and the man. The two are driven from the cave by the monster. The lion is knocked out while attempting to combat the creature. The monster is subsequently pursued by the destitute man, who easily vanquishes it. Georgios approaches the homeless man and apologizes for trying to murder him after seeing how strong he is, pretending to accept his apology. The homeless man kicks him hard and runs off. The herb she was searching for inside the cave is given to Lion by the homeless man shortly after she wakes up. In addition, he informs her that he has vanquished the beast. As Lion and the homeless man get more at ease, she tells Lion that her sister is ill. She is informed by the homeless man that her sister can be healed. Lion swears she will stop at nothing to save her sister. According to the homeless man, the purity of 3 incarnations is the remedy. In order for the homeless man to see her sister, Lion chooses to bring him home. Zhang Shui has been keeping an eye on them in the meantime to make sure the homeless man doesn't do anything to harm Lion. Lion unlocks the door and calls his sister as he gets home. When Zhang Shui realizes that Lion's sister resembles Lion identically, she is shocked. Walking near the lake together are Lion and the homeless people. Lion is told by the homeless man that he wants her and that he is in love with her. Lion swiftly exits, deciding she doesn't want to hear any more of the homeless man's words. It is also disclosed that Lion goes by Lotus Crane as her nickname, but her sister goes by Lotus Frost. Lion shows up to see to her sister's needs. Lion informs her sister that she is experimenting with the medication that the homeless person gave her. While working to refine the prescription, she acknowledges that there are dangers of side effects. She just has to try. Lotus Frost replies when she inquires about her sister's ability to trust the homeless man. Lotus Frost attempts to talk Lion out of living her life, but Lion can't just up and leave her sister in pain. Lotus Frost gets out of her sick bed and makes her way to the lake shortly after. Beside the lake, she discovers the homeless man sleeping. She remarks that the homeless man is an odd man, while yet appreciating his beauty. Her goal is to ascertain whether or not the homeless man can be trusted. The homeless man awakens from his slumber at that very moment. The two get into a boat and head out on the lake. Lotus shares stories of their early experiences. Lotus Frost quickly discovers that she is dreaming as the talk goes on. As she awakens, she becomes irate. She believed she had gone to the lake by herself on foot. Lion strokes her and tells her it's all going to be all right. The truth is out. Lion fell into the lake. Lotus Frost had to plunge inside to save her when they were younger. When Lotus Frost could no longer withstand the cold, her illness began. Lion visits the homeless man the following day. He informs Lion about a recent advancement in the treatment plan for Lotus Frost. He claims to have discovered the final ingredient in the prescription, and that there won't be any negative effects. When Lion asks excitedly for the medication, the man on the streets urges her to stop worrying. The homeless man eventually admits that blood is the last ingredient under intense pressure. The amount of blood required, he continues, is potentially fatal. It has to be from a relative as well. The homeless man explains that Lotus Frost needs a relative's blood since she has a blood disorder. The destitute man advises Lion to notify her sister somehow. When Lion gets home that evening, she tells her sister a falsehood, saying there isn't a chance for a treatment yet. She does, nonetheless, implore her sister to maintain her faith. When Kai returns home, Luori tries to cut her in, but a protective spell stops her. And when Kai wakes up, Luori is by her side. Since she is still unaware of Luori's betrayal, she becomes ecstatic and gives him a short hug. When the two hear the disturbance outside, they dash to investigate. When Kai notices her companions being attacked by mercenaries, she orders Luori to assist them, but Luori turns his attention to the fairies instead. Kai continues to tell herself that Luori is her buddy, even though she is bewildered about what is happening. The homeless man and Lion are seen meeting. Lion expresses her frustration about having to look after her sister to the homeless man. She also wants to live her own life. She claims that everything that has occurred and is happening is her responsibility, but she is already worn out. She had no idea that Lotus Frost had followed her and had been listening in on everything she and the homeless man talked about. With sorrow, Xiangshu observes Lotus Frost weeping uncontrollably. That evening, Lion tends to her sister. The homeless man has then declared his love for her, she informs her. Lotus Frost asserts that Lion is deserving of happiness, and that Lion is extremely happy. To make Lotus's favorite food, Lion heads to the kitchen. At that moment, Lotus moves over to Leon and retrieves a knife from under her bed. She tries to stab her with a knife, but it doesn't work. Turning back, Lion gives her the order to do so. Lion takes Lotus's hand and inserts the knife inside her, causing her to hesitate. Lion orders her sister to accompany her to the lake right away, so she can meet the homeless man. Lotus carries her sister to the lake while crying. The homeless man by the lake tells her that Lion purposefully gave herself up for her sister. She intentionally spoke those nasty comments to make Lotus Frost detest her, because she knew her sister was present. Lion was aware that Lotus would never have consented to her sister's self-sacrifice. After suffering a heartbreak, Lotus drags her sister into the lake. The homeless man then offers Lotus the chance to be resurrected as a twin if she accepts to be a fairy. This will put everything right and return her life to its previous state. The fairy seed swiftly encircles Lotus and her sister when she instantly accepts the arrangement. Lotus Frost was the only one to turn into a fairy though, as the evolution failed. The lion is actually a frozen lotus dew. Lotus Frost is left with traces of her memories, because this caused her to erase some of them. When Hyangsu notices this, he becomes enraged and chastises the homeless guy for playing with people's emotions and sentiments for his own gain. He claims that the homeless man is the source of all of their resentment and grief. Despite Xiangshu's best efforts, he is simply too strong for him and easily blocks his blows. The homeless man advises Xiangshui to give up since there is no way to alter the conclusion. He's also made fun of by the homeless man, who says he won't be able to save his buddies who are struggling to survive back home. He is wrong, as Xiangshu asserts, and he will stop at nothing to protect the people he cares about. When Xiangshu awoke, the homeless man was nowhere to be seen. He thinks he's disappeared, yet he reappears. Xiangshu is informed by the homeless man that he would now have the opportunity to play the game as he pleases. He ought to employ his own plan and make an effort to alter the game's outcome. Xiangshu will be there and able to communicate with people this time. Everything began just as it had in the previous episode at that point. When Lane arrives at the lake, Xiangshu is there. The two begin to acquaint themselves with one another. They go everywhere and engage in all activities together. Xiangshu informs Lion that he is aware of a medication that can treat her sister while they are conversing. He claims that after 10 years of development, it has been acknowledged by science. Lion counters that since they have exhausted all options, she doesn't think it's conceivable, telling Lotus that her sister is going to give herself up for her. Xiangshu rushes to Lion's house right away. Lotus informs Xiangshu that although she is aware, she will not allow it to occur. Lotus expresses gratitude to him for his assistance and promises to persuade Lion to ask Xiangshu to supper. Xiangshu agrees when Lion invites him to supper at their house later. Xiangshu is spotted at the sister's house the next day. The three of them take a seat to savor a treat that Lotus has prepared. A few minutes afterward, while eating, Xiangshu and Lion pass out. It seems that Lotus has included a sedative in their cuisine. Subsequently, she acknowledges that Lion is the sick person, and she is prepared to take any and all measures to restore her health. Xiangshu is shocked by this, since everything has suddenly become a different reality. When Xiangshu awakens, the sisters have left. He rushes to the lake, but realizes that he is too late. He then begs the homeless man for another chance. The destitute man concurs, stating that he has one more chance to alter the outcome before he gets stuck in the afterlife. Everything resets again and Xiangxi starts thinking of methods to prevent Lion from sacrificing herself. The day comes when Lotus is about to stab her sister. As she is about to do so, Xiangxu runs inside and tells the duo that they can still have a happy life, even though one of them is unwell. He persuades them not to waste his last chance, and the sisters finally realize that he is right. The homeless man is pleased with how Xiangshui handled the situation, but informs him that nothing has changed. He says this world is a memory world, and no matter what Xiangshui does, it cannot change the past. Xiangshui kneels down crying that all his efforts are wasted. Just then, Lion shows up and says she appreciates all his efforts to try and save her. She kisses him and thanks him. She then creates a portal that helps Xiangshui and the dragon go back to the normal world. On their way back, the dragon promises to serve Xiangxiu. During the commotion, Xiangxiu arrives on the back of the dragon. He picks Kai from Lori's side and moves her over to where the fairies are. The mercenaries attack and Mo-Fi retaliates. Just then, Lotus Frost hugs Xiangxiu and merges with him. Xiangxiu transforms into a powerful being and says this feeling is different from Mo-Fi's. Liori attacks him, but Xiangshui turns out to be too powerful. Xiangshui starts freezing up the mercenaries. Liori summons all his power to face off against Xiangshu. Xiangshui then adds Mo-Fi to the merger. With the two fairies combined, Xiangshu remains unstoppable. He easily beats Liori and even begins to toy with him. Liori is stubborn and keeps going after Xiangshu. Xiangshu gets angry and is about to finish off Liori with a massive magical blow, but Enki gets in the way. She begs Xiangshu to stop the fight. She cries that someone will die if they should continue like this. Xiangshu listens to Enki and unmerges himself from the fairies. Kai faces Liori and also scolds him. She says Liori cannot defeat Xiangshu. She begs him not to fight anymore and hugs him. Liori gets sad and starts to leave. Kai asks if she will still see him, and he says yes. Just then, bright lights start showing up in the lake. Lotus tells the group that her sister's soul is buried in the lake, and she has decided to protect the lake for the rest of her life. Kai gets super sad when she realizes that Lotus is also leaving. She laments that Liori is gone and Lotus is about to leave them too. Lotus says they will meet someday. She faces Mo-Fi and tells her that she now has nothing to be jealous about. Mo-Fi tries to deny her feelings for Xiangqiu, but Lotus is aware. Lotus asks Mo-Fi to take care of Tsangchu, and she disappears into the lake. Yuexian says she will always be with Tsangchu, and immediately jumps into the guidebook that is now located inside Tsangchu's cell phone. Mo-Fi also decides to be with Tsangchu, and she jumps into the book. Tsangchu and Enki get on the dragon and start riding away. As the duo travels, Enki reveals that Lotus gave her a fairy seed before leaving. Tsangchu shouts in horror as the dragon flies away in the distance.